The red Arizona sunset painted the sky as 7-year-old Phoebe skipped alongside Nathan Two Hawks, her unlikely protector. His massive frame towered over her small one, their shadows stretching across the dusty path leading from the trading post. She'd been following him around for weeks since he'd pulled her from the flash flood. Today she looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the dying sun, and asked the question with innocent certainty, "Will you marry me when I grow up, Nathan?" His weathered face remained still as stone, but his dark eyes flickered with something ancient and sad. His answer came soft but firm, words that would haunt them both for decades to come. What answer could possibly protect a child's heart while honoring a truth that couldn't be denied? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 weeks earlier, the sky had darkened with alarming speed. Thunder rolled across the canyon walls as Thomas Bennett rushed to secure his trading post's outdoor merchandise. "Sarah, get Phoebe inside now," he shouted to his wife over the wind. 7-year-old Phoebe stood transfixed by the approaching wall of water. The normally dry creek bed had transformed into a churning monster within minutes. Before Sarah could reach her daughter, the ground beneath Phoebe's feet crumbled. Her scream pierced the air as she tumbled into the surging current. From the trading post's edge, a massive figure moved with unexpected grace. Nathan Two Hawks dropped his supplies and sprinted toward the flood. Without hesitation, he plunged into the raging water. The current slammed his body against boulders, but his powerful arms cut through the torrent with single-minded purpose. Onlookers gasped as Nathan reached the terrified child, clutching her tiny form against his chest. The journey back proved even more treacherous. Twice they disappeared beneath the surface, prompting Sarah's anguished cries. When Nathan finally dragged himself onto the muddy bank, cradling a coughing Phoebe, Thomas fell to his knees in gratitude. "Thank you," Sarah sobbed, taking her daughter. "Thank you." Nathan nodded once, water streaming from his long black hair. He retrieved a small leather pouch that had torn from his neck during the rescue, a beaded medicine bag containing sacred herbs and a hawk's feather, symbols of protection and strength. He noticed Phoebe watching him with wide eyes as he checked its contents. Later that evening, Thomas approached Nathan as he prepared to leave. "I've never seen anything like what you did today," he said awkwardly. "My daughter, she's everything to any man would do the same," Nathan replied, his deep voice carrying the faint accent of his people. "No," Thomas countered, extending his hand. "They wouldn't. Not for—" He stopped, uncomfortable with voicing the truth. Not many white men would risk their lives for an Apache. In the days that followed, Phoebe developed an unmistakable fascination with her rescuer. She began appearing whenever Nathan visited the trading post, watching from behind barrels as he bartered for supply. By the second week, she'd grown bold enough to follow him outside, maintaining a careful distance. Nathan pretended not to notice her small shadow for several days. Then one afternoon, without turning around, he spoke. "Little one, does your father know you follow me?" Phoebe stepped from behind a juniper tree. "Mama says I can watch you so long as I stay where the trading post is still in sight." He studied her, this child with sunlight in her hair and fearlessness in her stance. "Why do you follow?" "Because you're not scary like everyone says," she answered simply. "And you know things. I saw you tracking yesterday. Could you teach me?" A ghost of a smile crossed Nathan's weathered face. Against his better judgment, he found himself bending down, pointing to faint marks in the dust. "Jackrabbit," he explained. "See how the back feet land ahead of the front." Phoebe's delight was instantaneous and complete. Thus began an unlikely friendship that raised eyebrows throughout the settlement. Sarah observed with cautious acceptance, while Thomas wavered between gratitude for his daughter's life and discomfort at her growing attachment to the imposing Apache. Nathan himself remained puzzled by the child's persistence. Perhaps it was her innocence, her ability to see him as simply a man, not the fearsome giant Apache that made others step aside when he passed. Or perhaps it was how she occasionally reminded him of another little girl, one whose memory he kept locked away alongside his grief. One afternoon, Phoebe arrived at their usual meeting place, carrying a small carved wooden bird. "I made this for you," she announced proudly. "Because you soar like one." Nathan accepted the crude carving with ceremonial solemnity, tucking it into his medicine pouch. From that moment, something shifted. He had rescued her from the water, but somehow this small child, with her unquestioning acceptance, was rescuing something long dormant within him. Whispers followed Nathan Two Hawks like persistent shadows. Most settlers knew fragments of his story, enough to fuel speculation, but not enough for understanding. 20 miles from the trading post, nestled in a hidden canyon, stood a small cabin Nathan had built with his own hands. Here, away from watchful eyes, he kept the remnants of his former life. On this particular evening, Nathan sat cross-legged before a small fire, unfolding a faded photograph, its edges worn from years of handling. The image showed a younger version of himself standing proudly beside a beautiful Apache woman. Her serene smile radiated from the yellowed paper, as she held a small bundle wrapped in a traditional blanket. "Apache," he whispered, tracing his wife's face. And little Ayana, the army photographer, had taken this picture 10 years ago, when Nathan served as a scout. 1 month later, both mother and child were gone, victims of a measles outbreak that devastated their small band while Nathan was away guiding soldiers. Upon returning to find fresh graves, something broke inside him. Though his people offered comfort through traditional ceremonies, Nathan withdrew. The tribal elders warned that isolating himself from community rituals would leave his spirit vulnerable, but grief made him deaf to their counsel. For 3 years, he wandered, taking dangerous jobs as a scout and tracker for the army. His reputation grew as a man who could navigate impossible terrain and track what others deemed untraceable. Some officers respected his skills, others merely tolerated his presence as a necessary tool. None became friends. Colonel James Bartlett, commander at Fort Sierra, was among the few who treated Nathan with genuine regard. "Two hawks sees what 10 white men miss," Bartlett once declared to a skeptical Washington official, "and he's never once led us astray, even when tracking his own people." That comment revealed the complexity of Nathan's position. To the Apache, he walked a treacherous line. Some viewed him as traitor, others understood his service as protection, diverting army patrols from hidden camps, while providing warning of troops' movements. Nathan had leveraged this precarious balance to negotiate small mercies, medical supplies during outbreaks, additional rations during harsh winters, and occasionally the release of wrongfully accused tribesmen. His influence, though limited, had preserved lives on both sides of an increasingly volatile divide. Yet with each passing season, maintaining neutrality grew more difficult. New settlers arrived with hardened prejudices. Young warriors in his tribe called for resistance rather than accommodation. Nathan recognized the warning signs of approaching conflict from previous territories where diplomacy had ultimately failed. The photograph represented everything he had lost and why he kept emotional distance from others, until Phoebe Bennett had nearly drowned in the flash flood. Something about rescuing her had awakened dormant protective instincts he thought long buried with his family. Nathan carefully returned the photograph to a leather-bound journal filled with his observations of changing territories, animal migrations and weather patterns. Written in Apache with occasional English notes, these records documented a vanishing way of life while serving as his private memorial to a world few settlers would ever understand. From a shelf he retrieved a small wooden horse he'd begun carving. His massive hands, capable of breaking a man's neck in combat, moved with surprising delicacy over the emerging details. This gift for Phoebe was taking shape slowly, deliberately, each knife stroke a meditation. Tomorrow she would likely appear again at their usual meeting place, full of questions about tracks and plants and Apache stories. Her curiosity was relentless, her acceptance of him complete. She showed no fear of his scarred face or imposing size, only fascination and a child's straightforward friendship. Nathan set down his carving knife. The horse would be finished soon. He knew he should discourage the child's attachment, knew the fragile peace that allowed their friendship could shatter with one incident, one misunderstanding. Yet each day, he found himself watching for her approach, her innocent presence a temporary balm for old wounds. In teaching her, something was slowly reawakening within himself, something he had thought forever, lost beneath a pony and iron as burial stones. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Nathan demonstrated how to identify edible plants along the creek bed. Phoebe listened with rapt attention, her small fingers mimicking his movements as they examined a cluster of wild onions. Always check that the bulb smells right, Nathan instructed. Some plants trick the eye, but not the nose. Phoebe nodded solemnly. Over the past month, these lessons had become a cherished routine, 3 times weekly. With her mother's cautious permission, she would meet Nathan at the edge of the trading post property. Sarah Bennett watched from the porch, mending basket in her lap, but needle often still. Though she'd never admit it to Thomas, she found herself increasingly comfortable with the unlikely friendship. The Apache's patience with her daughter's endless questions revealed a gentleness that contradicted his fearsome reputation. "Mama says I'm learning more from you than at school," Phoebe announced proudly, tucking the wild onion into her collection pouch. Nathan's expression remained impassive, but his eyes softened. "Different knowledge, both valuable. The other children say I shouldn't talk to you," she continued matter-of-factly. "Billy Wilson said you scalped his uncle." Nathan stiffened slightly. "What did you tell him? That you never even met his uncle, and he's stupid?" She looked up with absolute trust. "You wouldn't hurt anybody unless you had to, right?" The simple faith in her eyes stirred something protective in Nathan's chest. "Right," he answered quietly. Later that week, Nathan arrived at the trading post to find Phoebe in tears, hiding behind stacked flour barrels. A group of boys had taunted her about being the Indian's pet. Thomas had intervened, but not before harsh words were exchanged. "Words are just air," Nathan told her, as she wiped her eyes. "They only have power if you give it to them. But they said awful things about you too." Nathan reached into his pocket and withdrew a strand of colorful glass beads, a trade item he'd acquired specifically for this purpose. "In my tribe, we make story bracelets. Each bead represents a lesson or memory to carry with us." As they threaded the beads together, Nathan shared simplified versions of Apache coming-of-age stories. The activity calmed Phoebe, transforming her hurt into curiosity. When finished, she proudly wore the bracelet, unaware of the protective symbols Nathan had subtly incorporated into the pattern. That evening, Thomas confronted Nathan behind the trading post. "This has gone far enough," he said, keeping his voice low. "The whole town's talking. It's not right. A man like you spending so much time with a little girl." "I teach her survival skills," Nathan replied evenly. "Nothing more. That's not the point." Thomas ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, I'm grateful for what you did. God knows we all are. But Phoebe needs to be with her own kind, learning proper things." "Her own kind," Nathan repeated, the words hollow. "And what kind is that, Mr. Bennett?" Thomas flushed. "You know what I mean. She's a white girl who'll grow up to marry a decent white man someday. This, whatever this is, it confuses her." Nathan's face revealed nothing, but inside, an old familiar pain resurfaced. The invisible boundaries between worlds were being redrawn, as they always were. "I will stop the lessons," he said finally, "if that is what you wish." Before Thomas could respond, Sarah appeared with Phoebe at her side. The child immediately brightened at seeing Nathan. "I thought you'd gone already. Look." She thrust forward a crude clay figure she'd made, a towering man with long black hair. "It's you, for your house." The simple gift, this child's representation of how she saw him, struck Nathan deeply. Thomas watched the exchange, his resolve visibly wavering. "Maybe once a week would be all right," he conceded finally, with Sarah present. That night, as summer stars blanketed the sky, Nathan and Phoebe sat on the trading post steps, while Sarah worked nearby. The child was unusually quiet, watching the fireflies with a contemplative expression rare for her age. "Nathan," she asked suddenly, "do you have a wife?" The question caught him unprepared. "I did once, long ago." "What happened to her?" "She walks with the ancestors now, her and our daughter." Phoebe absorbed this information with childlike directness. "Were they pretty?" "Yes," he said softly. "Very pretty." She nodded, as if confirming something important, then looked up at him with complete seriousness. "Will you marry me when I grow up, Nathan?" Nathan's expression remained unchanged, though something flickered in his dark eyes, surprise, perhaps sadness. The innocent question hung between them in the evening air. Sarah, who had been pretending not to listen from her position on the porch, suddenly found herself holding her breath. "Why would you ask such a thing, little one?" Nathan finally said, his voice gentle. Phoebe shrugged, swinging her legs against the wooden step. "Because you're the bravest person I know, and you teach me things, and you're not mean like some of the boys in town." Her logic was simple, unassailable in its childish clarity. Nathan studied the horizon, gathering his thoughts, how to answer honestly without crushing a child's feelings. In his culture, such directness would be respected with equal honesty. "Phoebe," he began carefully, "our paths walk different trails, but trails can cross," she countered immediately. "You said so when you showed me deer paths last week." A small smile touched his lips, despite the weight of the moment. "Yes, trails cross, but some journeys must continue separately." Reaching into his pocket, Nathan withdrew a smooth river stone, amber-colored with a natural hole through its center. Such stones were considered sacred by his people, windows through which spirits could observe the living world. "This is a vision stone," he explained, placing it in her small palm. "My grandmother gave it to me when I was not much older than you." Phoebe examined it with reverence, holding it up to watch the fading sunlight filter through the hole. "I will love you always, little one," Nathan continued, each word measured and true. "But our paths must walk separate ways. The spirits have shown me this." Phoebe's brow furrowed. "Because you're Apache and I'm not?" "Partly," he acknowledged, "but also because I am already a man grown, and you are just beginning your journey." He gestured toward the distant mountains. "When you are a woman, I will be an old man with gray braids." "I wouldn't mind," she insisted. "Others would," he replied softly, "and their minds would make your life difficult." Sarah moved closer now, sensing her daughter's confusion. She'd intended to intervene, but something in Nathan's respectful handling of the situation kept her silent. "Keep this stone," Nathan told Phoebe. "One day you will understand my answer better. Until then, know that I am your friend and protector, which is a bond as sacred as any other." Tears welled in Phoebe's eyes, not from full understanding, but from sensing the finality in his words. "Promise you'll always be my friend, even if you won't marry me." "This I promise." He touched the stone in her hand. "As long as the river flows." That night, as Sarah tucked her daughter into bed, she approached the subject carefully. "Nathan explained things well to you today," she began. Phoebe nodded, the vision stone clutched in her hand beneath the covers. "He said he'll always be my friend instead." "That's right." Sarah brushed back a strand of her daughter's hair. "And you know, friendship is very special. But married people get to stay together always, Phoebe Deves." Sarah smiled sadly, thinking of her sister's unhappy marriage in Boston. "Not always, sweetheart. And sometimes friends share deeper bonds than husbands and wives. Nathan said people wouldn't like it if we got married when I grow up." Sarah chose her words carefully. "The world can be set in its ways. People fear what's different." "That's silly," Phoebe declared with childish certainty. "Yes," Sarah agreed quietly. "Often it is." Across town in his small cabin, Nathan sat before his fire, troubled. The child's innocent question had stirred memories and regrets he'd long suppressed. He thought of a pony of promises made beneath desert stars. He thought of Ayana, who never had the chance to ask such innocent questions as she grew. He removed his worn Cavalry Scout's telescope from its protective case, a gift from Colonel Bartlett for saving his life during an ambush 3 years earlier. The brass instrument represented the tenuous respect he'd earned among some white men. He extended it, focusing on the distant lights of the settlement. Nathan had answered Phoebe truthfully. The spirits had indeed shown him that their paths must remain separate through visions that came during a sweat lodge ceremony months ago. Visions of conflict approaching, of choices that would soon force him to stand firmly on one side of an increasingly unbridgeable divide. The telescope collapsed with a decisive click. For now, he would continue teaching the child, treasuring these peaceful moments before the storm he sensed gathering on the horizon. A storm that would test every bond, including this innocent friendship. 1 year passed. The trading post expanded as new settlers arrived, bringing with them Eastern goods and hardened attitudes toward the native tribes. Thomas Bennett's business thrived, but the relaxed atmosphere of the outpost gradually transformed. Where once Apache traders were welcomed for their pelts and crafts, now they were met with suspicious glances and hurried transactions. Nathan noticed the change immediately. The easy access he once enjoyed became restricted. Shopkeepers watched his movement. Mothers pulled children closer when he passed. The silver marshal's badge, newly pinned to Wallace Miller's chest, seemed to catch sunlight whenever Nathan appeared. The man had arrived from Texas with stories of Comanche raids that he recounted loudly in the saloon, deliberately within Nathan's hearing. "You don't look at the individual snake," Miller once declared to his drinking companions. "You clear the whole net." 8-year-old Phoebe continued to seek out Nathan whenever possible, though their lessons had grown less frequent. Today she found him loading supplies onto his packhorse behind the general's. "You haven't come for 2 weeks, she accused, clutching her collection of pressed leaves they had gathered last autumn. "The mountains called me away," he answered, securing a rope around his provisions. In truth, he'd been scouting the new cavalry movements, warning his people of expanded patrols. "Mr. Miller said all Indians will be sent to reservations soon." Phoebe's direct gaze searched his face for reassurance. "He says it's for the best." Nathan continued his work without responding immediately. The child had unwittingly touched upon the very issue that had kept him awake through countless nights. Government agents had been visiting tribal camps, making promises of food and protection in exchange for relocation. "What do you think about that?" he finally asked. Phoebe frowned thoughtfully. "I think it's wrong to make people move if they don't want to." She hesitated. "Would you have to go too?" "Perhaps." He adjusted the final strap. "One day. But then I wouldn't see you anymore." The quiver in her voice made him turn to face her fully. "Phoebe," Sarah's voice called from the front of the store. "Your father needs you inside." Nathan nodded toward the store. "Go. Your father waits." As Phoebe reluctantly obeyed, Sarah approached. Her expression was apologetic, but firm. "Nathan, Thomas and I have been meaning to speak with you." She lowered her voice. "Things are changing in town. The new families, they're not as understanding about Phoebe spending time with," she faltered. "With an Apache," he finished for her. Sarah sighed. "It's not just that. Marshal Miller has been asking questions about your comings and goings, suggesting you might be passing information to the tribes about military movements." Nathan's face remained impassive, though his jaw tightened slightly. "Are you?" she asked directly, surprising them both with her boldness. He met her gaze. "Would it matter if I said no?" Sarah looked away first. "I don't know anymore." After a moment she continued, "Thomas thinks it would be best if you and Phoebe had less contact for a while, until things settle." Behind them, inside the store, they could hear Phoebe's voice excitedly showing her father a new rock for her collection, the kind Nathan had taught her to identify. "I understand," Nathan said quietly. Later that week, Colonel Bartlett summoned Nathan to Fort Sierra. The officer's office was sparse, but comfortable, with maps covering one wall and a collection of native crafts, gifts from various tribes, displayed respectfully on shelves. "You've heard about the new reservation directives?" Bartlett asked, without preamble. Nathan nodded once. Your people won't go willingly. It wasn't a question. Would you? Nathan countered. Bartlett sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. No, but I also can't stop what's coming. He lifted a sealed envelope from his desk. These are my new orders. The army is sending 3 more companies next month. They're determined to resolve the Apache problem before year's end. The colonel broke the seal on a bottle of whiskey, pouring 2 glasses. I've requested you be given special dispensation, official status as Army Scout with protection from relocation. Nathan didn't touch the offered glass. And my people, those who agree to serve as scouts, might receive similar consideration. And the rest? Bartlett met his gaze directly. You know the answer. That evening, Nathan stood on a ridge overlooking the settlement. In his hand, he held a worn leather saddlebag embossed with cavalry insignia, a gift from his first scouting assignment. Inside were items essential for the choice he was about to make: ammunition, dried meat, medicine, and most precious, the photograph of his wife and child. The lights of Phoebe's home glowed warm in the distance. Making his decision, Nathan turned toward the mountains where his tribe's elders awaited his return, and his final choice of allegiance. 2 years passed with mounting tensions. Apache raids increased in outlying settlements, while cavalry patrols pushed deeper into tribal territories. Nathan walked an increasingly dangerous line, his appearances at the trading post becoming rare and brief. 10-year-old Phoebe had grown taller, her childish roundness giving way to the first hints of adolescence. She kept the vision stone on a cord around her neck, hidden beneath her clothes, a secret talisman connecting her to the increasingly absent Nathan. On this autumn morning, she sorted inventory in the storeroom when a familiar shadow darkened the doorway. Her heart leaped as she recognized Nathan's imposing silhouette. "You came back," she exclaimed, rushing forward but stopping short of embracing him, aware now of propriety in a way her younger self had never been. Nathan looked thinner, more weathered. A new scar traced his left cheekbone. His eyes, however, held the same steady calm as always when they rested on her. "I have come to speak with your father," he said, "and to say goodbye." Phoebe's smile faltered. "Goodbye? For how long?" "A long time, little one." Despite her growth, the endearment remained. Thomas emerged from the front of the store, tension visible in his stance. "2 hawks," he acknowledged with a nod. "Didn't expect to see you again." "I have information," Nathan replied. "For you alone." Sarah appeared, placing a protective hand on Phoebe's shoulder. "Take these invoices up front, dear," she instructed, handing her daughter a stack of papers. "But Nathan just got here. Now please." Reluctantly, Phoebe obeyed, but not before catching Nathan's meaningful glance toward the back door. Their old signal to meet later by the cottonwood tree. That afternoon she slipped away to their meeting place. Nathan waited, more solemn than she had ever seen him. "The cavalry burned 3 Apache camps last month," he said without preamble. "Women and children were among those killed." Phoebe's eyes widened. Such news hadn't reached the settlement. "My people will retaliate soon. I cannot prevent it." He met her gaze directly. "When they do, the army will respond with greater force. No Apache within 100 miles will be considered peaceful." "But you've helped the army," Phoebe protested. "Colonel Bartlett respects you." "Colonel Bartlett has been reassigned to Washington. The new commander sees no difference between one Apache and another." Understanding dawned slowly on Phoebe's face. "You're leaving to join your tribe." Nathan nodded once. "I have walked between 2 worlds for many years. That path has disappeared. Take me with you." The childish plea escaped before she could stop it. A rare smile touched Nathan's lips. "Your place is here with your family. But you promised to always be my friend." Tears threatened, but she blinked them back, wanting to appear strong in his eyes. "And so I shall remain." From his pocket, Nathan withdrew a small deerskin pouch adorned with intricate beadwork. "This contains sacred herbs for protection and healing. My mother made it before she walked to the spirit world." He placed it in her palm, closing her fingers around it. "Keep this and the vision stone. Together, they will remind you that some bonds cannot be broken by distance. Phoebe clutched the pouch, its leather warm from being carried close to his body. When will I see you again? That is for the spirits to decide. His voice softened. But I have a request of you, Phoebe Bennet. Anything, she promised immediately. Remember what I have taught you, not just about plants and animals, but about seeing beyond what others tell you to see. His large hand briefly touched her head in a gesture of blessing. Judge people by their actions, not by the color of their skin or the language of their prayer. Hearing approaching footsteps, Nathan straightened. Thomas appeared at the edge of the clearing, rifle casually but purposefully in hand. Thought I might find you two here, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Sarah's looking for you, Phoebe. She hesitated, desperate to prolong these final moments. Go, Nathan told her gently. Remember what I said. Walking away was the hardest thing she had ever done. At the edge of the clearing, she turned back. The answer is still no, she asked, a bittersweet echo of her childish proposal. Nathan's expression remained solemn, but his eyes held a depth of affection that transcended words. The answer remains the same, little one, but the friendship endures. By morning, word spread through the settlement. The giant Apache had disappeared into the mountains. Some claimed he'd gone to lead raids against white settlements. Others insisted he'd departed to prevent bloodshed. Only the Bennets knew he had left a carefully drawn map showing safe routes away from coming conflicts. His final act of protection for a community that had never fully accepted him, and for the one child who had never questioned his worth. 7 years passed. The settlement grew into a proper town with painted storefronts, a schoolhouse, and a small church with a bell that rang every Sunday. The trading post expanded into Bennett's General Store, now the largest establishment on Main Street. Thomas's hair had grayed at the temples, while Sarah taught at the new school. 17-year-old Phoebe Bennet had blossomed into a young woman, whose quiet confidence and unusual knowledge of native plants had earned her a reputation as the town's unofficial healer. Women with sick children and ranchers with injured horses often sought her remedies when the town doctor's conventional treatments failed. On this warm June afternoon, Phoebe gathered herbs in the foothills, a worn book of botanical drawings tucked in her basket. The leather-bound volume, a gift from her father on her 16th birthday, contained her meticulous sketches of local flora, alongside medicinal properties she documented through observation and careful experimentation. She paused at a familiar ridge overlooking the valley, the same spot where Nathan had once taught her to identify distant landmarks. 7 years had passed since his departure, yet his lessons remained vivid in her mind. Sometimes she imagined she could feel his presence in these hills, watching over her like the protective spirit he had described in his stories. The Apache conflicts had largely moved south and west, away from their growing town. Occasional news of skirmishes reached them, but the immediate threat had faded. Some settlers claimed that Nathan Two Hawks had died in battle. Others insisted they'd glimpsed him leading a band of warriors across distant mesas. Phoebe believed neither story. The vision stone still hung around her neck, and sometimes when she held it up to the light just so, she felt certain he lived. "Miss Bennet," a voice called from down the trail. "Your mother said I might find you here." Phoebe tucked the stone beneath her blouse as Michael Bartlett, the colonel's son, appeared around the bend. At 22, he had his father's military bearing softened by a scholarly disposition. Recently returned from medical school back east, he had joined his father, who now served as the town's mayor after retiring from the army. "Dr. Bartlett," she acknowledged, with a smile. "What brings you up this way?" "Michael, please," he corrected, slightly breathless from the climb. "And I came to request your assistance, actually." He gestured to her basket of herbs. "Father says you know more about local medicinal plants than anyone." "I had a good teacher," she replied simply. "The Apache scout," Michael nodded. "Father spoke of him often." Phoebe studied him, surprised by the lack of judgment in his tone. Unlike most young men in town, Michael had never mocked her connection to Nathan or dismissed her knowledge as Indian superstition. "I'm preparing a study of Western medicinal flora for a medical journal," he continued. "I was hoping you might share your expertise." As they descended the trail together, Phoebe found herself engaging in the most stimulating conversation she'd had in years. Michael listened intently as she explained the properties of various plants, jotting notes and asking thoughtful questions. "You should have been allowed to study medicine," he remarked as they reached the edge of town. "You have a natural scientific mind." Phoebe laughed softly. "A female doctor? The town would be more scandalized by that than by my Apache methods." "Times are changing," Michael insisted. "Back east, women are entering universities. Limited programs. Yes, but the door is opening." Something fluttered in Phoebe's chest. Not romantic interest, but the sudden glimpse of possibilities she had never considered. That evening at dinner, Thomas watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. "Dr. Bartlett seemed quite taken with you," he observed casually. "With my knowledge of plants," Phoebe corrected. "He's preparing a research paper." Sarah exchanged a knowing glance with her husband. "He's a fine young man. Educated, respectful. His father's position ensures a secure future." Phoebe recognized the familiar territory this conversation was entering. At 17, she had already declined 3 marriage proposals from local boys, much to her parents' dismay. "I'm not ready to settle down," she stated firmly. The same response she'd given for years. Later, in the privacy of her room, Phoebe removed a small wooden box from beneath her bed. Inside lay Nathan's deerskin medicine pouch, still fragrant with herbs after all these years. Beside it rested a tattered newspaper clipping, reporting a peace conference between Apache leaders and army officials last spring. Though the article mentioned no names, she had circled a blurred figure in the background, a tall man whose stance she would recognize anywhere. She traced the figure with her fingertip. "Where are you now?" she whispered. The vision stone seemed warmer against her skin tonight, as if responding to her thoughts. Tomorrow she would meet Michael again to continue their discussion of medicinal plants. Another path was opening before her, one of knowledge, possibly even opportunity beyond this small town. Yet something held her here, some certainty that her story with Nathan Two Hawks remained unfinished. 3 years later, Phoebe adjusted the sign hanging in the window of her small apothecary shop, Bennett's Natural Remedies. At 20, she had convinced her father to let her use the old storeroom behind the general store to establish her own business. What began as a reluctant concession to his headstrong daughter had blossomed into a respected establishment, drawing customers from neighboring towns. Michael Bartlett had been instrumental in legitimizing her work. His published paper on indigenous medicinal practices, crediting Phoebe's expertise, had attracted attention from medical circles back east. Though he had returned to Philadelphia to continue his research, their correspondence remained steady, letters filled with botanical discussions and occasional hints at deeper feelings on his part. Today, Phoebe carefully measured dried willow bark into small paper envelopes. The bell above her door chimed as Mayor Bartlett entered, removing his hat. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," he greeted her warmly. The retired colonel had become one of her strongest advocates, defending her methods to skeptics by citing his own experiences with Apache medicine during his military service. "What can I help you with today, Mayor? More of the joint liniment? Actually, I've come with knees." He lowered his voice, though they were alone. "A cavalry patrol encountered a group of Apache near Oak Creek yesterday. Peaceful interaction. They're from the San Carlos Reservation. Their leader requested permission to visit our town for trading." Phoebe's hands stilled over her work. "Apache here? The council approved this? With conditions?" Bartlett's expression was measured. "They'll be escorted, limited to daylight hours. But yes, I convinced the council it's good policy to encourage peaceful commerce." He paused. "The leader is called Two Hawks." The mortar and pestle Phoebe had been holding clattered to the counter. "Nathan," she whispered. "I thought you should hear it from me first," Bartlett said gently. "They'll arrive tomorrow morning." After he left, Phoebe closed her shop early, needing solitude to process the news. She climbed the familiar trail to the ridge, overlooking the valley, the same spot where she'd spoken with Michael 3 years ago, and where Nathan had taught her to identify distant landmarks long before. The town below had grown considerably, New buildings stretched toward the railroad station, completed last year. Progress, her father called it. Civilization. Phoebe touched the vision stone beneath her blouse, its smooth surface warm against her hin after 13 years of wearing it. What would Nathan think of their town now? Of her? The child he had known had become a woman with her own business and growing reputation. She removed a small hand mirror from her pocket, a copper-backed looking glass her mother had given her for her 18th birthday. Its ornate handle and polished surface represented her transition from girl to woman of standing. Phoebe studied her reflection critically, the sun-kissed skin, the determined set of her jaw, the eyes that had seen enough hardship to understand the world's complexities. Was she still the child who had innocently proposed marriage to a man from another world? Or had she become someone Nathan would no longer recognize? The next morning, Phoebe opened her shop at dawn, though customers rarely arrived before mid-morning. She had slept little, alternating between anticipation and anxiety. When hoofbeats sounded on the main street around 9, she forced herself to continue sorting inventory rather than rushing to the window. The town had changed since the days when an Apache appearance caused mothers to hustle children indoors. Still, she heard the murmurs spreading. Visitors had arrived, escorted by 4 cavalrymen. The bell above her door chimed. Phoebe looked up, composing her features into a professional smile that faltered instantly. A tall Apache woman stood in the doorway, dignified in a blend of traditional dress and acquired Western elements. Behind her, visible through the window, several Apache men conversed with the mayor beside loaded pack horses. "You are the medicine woman?" the visitor asked, in accented but clear English. Phoebe nodded, finding her voice. "Yes, welcome to my shop." The woman approached, studying the neatly arranged shelves of herbs and preparations. "Your knowledge is spoken of even among our people. I would see what you offer." As they discussed various remedies, Phoebe's gaze continually drifted to the window, searching for a familiar towering figure among the Apache delegation. She saw several men, but none with Nathan's distinctive height and bearing. "You look for someone," the woman observed perceptively. "I had heard 2 Hawks was among your group," Phoebe admitted. Something flickered in the woman's dark eyes, recognition, perhaps assessment. "He comes in his own time," she replied enigmatically, selecting several items and placing them in her basket. As the woman paid and turned to leave, she paused at the door. "The vision stone you wear," she said, nodding toward the cord visible at Phoebe's neck. "It is of our people." Phoebe's hand rose to touch it instinctively. "It was a gift, many years ago." The woman nodded once. "He will find you when the sun touches the mountain." The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Phoebe helped customers mechanically, her attention fixed on the window and the slanting shadows gradually lengthening across the street. The Apache traders remained visible in the town center, but there was still no sign of Nathan. As the sun lowered toward the western peaks, Phoebe closed her shop and walked purposefully toward the ridge trail. The Apache woman's words echoed in her mind. "He will find you when the sun touches the mountain." She understood the message clearly. Nathan would meet her at their old place. The climb seemed both familiar and strange, each step weighted with 13 years of memories and anticipation. Phoebe wore her finest day dress, though she felt foolish for such vanity. What did it matter how she looked? This was Nathan, the man who had seen her as a grubby, curious child, trailing after him like a persistent shadow. Yet she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach or the way she had carefully arranged her hair before leaving. Ridiculous, she scolded herself. Nathan had made his feelings clear years ago. This meeting was about friendship, nothing more. When she reached the ridge, the vista spread before her in golden evening light. The sun approached the mountaintop, casting long shadows across the valley. Phoebe waited, one hand unconsciously touching the vision stone at her throat. "It suits you still," came a deep voice behind her. Phoebe turned, her heart hammering against her ribs. Nathan Two Hawks stood several paces away, his massive frame silhouetted against the eastern sky. 13 years had etched new lines into his copper face and threaded silver through his long black hair, now braided with traditional ornaments. A jagged scar ran from his right temple down his cheek, new since she had last seen him. "Nathan," she whispered, suddenly feeling 7 years old again in his commanding presence. His dark eyes studied her, taking in the changes time had wrought. "Phoebe Bennett," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "The medicine woman. You knew. Word travels even to the reservation." Something like pride flickered across his stoic features. "You remembered my teachings." "All of them," she affirmed. They stood in silence, the weight of years stretching between them like a physical presence. Phoebe had imagined this moment countless times, the questions she would ask, the stories she would tell. Now words failed her entirely. Nathan reached slowly into a pouch at his waist and withdrew a small object wrapped in soft leather. When he extended his hand, Phoebe accepted it automatically. Unwrapping the bundle, she gasped. Inside lay a carved wooden horse, expertly crafted with flowing mane and alert ears. "You kept it all these years," she murmured, recognizing the figure she had made for him as a child. "It reminded me of simpler times," he said quietly. As the sun touched the mountain peak, its rays illuminated a silver band on Nathan's left wrist. The bracelet was intricately worked in traditional artipetons, but unmistakably made from silver coins. Phoebe's gaze lingered on it. "You married," she stated simply. Nathan followed her gaze to the bracelet. 8 winters ago, she was the daughter of a tribal elder. His voice softened slightly. "Nyanoka brought light back to my life when I thought all was darkness." Something cold settled in Phoebe's chest, despite her best efforts to conceal her reaction. "I'm glad you found happiness," she said, meaning it despite the unexpected ache. "She walks with the ancestors now," Nathan continued. 2 summers passed. A fever took her, and our unborn child. "I'm sorry," the words felt inadequate for such loss. "Truly," Nathan looked out over the valley, his profile sharp against the sunset. "Your parents are well? Father talks of retiring, though he likely never will." She hesitated. "And you?" "The reservation is not our home," he finished firmly, "but we endure. Some, like me, are permitted limited freedom to trade and serve as liaisons." Phoebe wanted to ask about the years between the conflicts, the hardships, whether he had fought against the cavalry, but the new lines etched into his face told stories she might not be ready to hear. "Why did you come back?" she asked instead. Nathan turned to face her fully, to fulfill a promise to a child who once asked an impossible question. The faintest smile touched his lips. "I said I would always be her friend." The simple answer pierced Phoebe more deeply than any elaborate declaration could have. "I've missed you," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "And I you, little one." The old endearment slipped out naturally, though she was clearly no longer the child he had known. As darkness began to gather around them, Nathan gestured toward the town below. "I must return to my people before the gates close for the night. The mayor's hospitality extends only so far. Will I see you again before you leave?" Phoebe asked, unable to mask the urgency in her voice. "Tomorrow," he promised. "There is much still unspoken between us." Dawn found Phoebe in her shop, grinding herbs with unusual intensity. Sleep had eluded her, her mind replaying yesterday's encounter with Nathan. The revelation of his marriage had unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Foolish, she chided herself. What had she expected after 13 years? The bell chimed as Sarah Bennett entered, carrying a basket of fresh-baked goods. At 50, Sarah remained handsome, though silver now streaked her once golden hair. "You left dinner early last night," her mother observed, setting down the basket. "Your father was concerned." "I had inventory to complete," Phoebe lied, avoiding her mother's perceptive gaze, "and it had nothing to do with the Apache delegation in town." Sarah's tone was gentle but knowing. "Or perhaps one visitor in particular." Phoebe's hands stilled over her mortar. You knew he was coming. Mayor Bartlett mentioned it might be two hawks leading the trading party. Sarah touched her daughter's arm. Did you see him? Yes. The single word contained multitudes. Sarah studied her daughter's face. And nothing way. Mother, we spoke briefly. He's changed. I've changed. Some things don't change, Sarah said quietly. I remember how you wore that stone every day after he left. She nodded toward the vision stone, visible at Phoebe's neck. Still do. Before Phoebe could respond, the shop door opened. Nathan stood in the doorway, his imposing frame seeming to reduce the small space. He wore a curious blend of traditional Apache garments and cavalry-issue trousers, marking his position between worlds. Mrs. Bennett, he greeted Sarah with dignified respect. Mr. Two Hawks. Sarah's voice held warmth despite her obvious surprise. It's been many years, too many, he acknowledged. Your husband is well? Very? He'll be sorry to have missed you. Sarah gathered her shawl, giving Phoebe a meaningful glance. I should return to the store. Please don't let me interrupt. After she departed, silence settled between them. Nathan examined the shop with interest, reading the carefully labeled jars and boxes. You have built something important here, he observed. I had a good foundation, Phoebe replied. Your teaching. Nathan approached the counter, removing a small leather-bound ledger from inside his vest. The book was weathered, its edges darkened from years of handling. I brought something for you. He placed it before her. My observations of plants from the reservation land, different from those you know here. Their properties, preparations. Phoebe opened the ledger with reverent hands. Inside, neat drawings accompanied text, written in a mixture of Apache and English. This is Dale, she whispered, recognizing the significance of such knowledge being shared outside his tribe. Knowledge should not die with the knower, he said simply. As Phoebe turned the pages, questions that had burned within her all night rose to her lips. The years between were they very difficult? Nathan considered her question carefully. There were dark times. Blood was shed that cannot be restored. His gaze grew distant. I fought when I had to, protected when I could. I saw your name in a newspaper once. A peace conference. He nodded. 3 years ago, I helped to negotiate terms for my band, to leave the mountains peacefully. And your wife, Nyanoka, he provided softly. She was a healer among our people. She would have understood your work. Something in his expression softened. She knew of you, the child who once asked me to marry her. Heat rushed to Phoebe's cheeks. I was very young. She found it amusing, Nathan admitted, but also touching. She had a generous heart. Phoebe absorbed this, trying to imagine the woman who had shared Nathan's life. You loved her very much, yes? The simple admission held no apology or hesitation. Strangely, the confirmation eased something in Phoebe's chest. I'm glad you weren't alone all those years. A comfortable silence settled between them as Phoebe continued examining the ledger. Finally, Nathan spoke again. And you, there has been no husband. She shook her head. Opportunities, but none felt right. She didn't mention Michael's letters, increasingly personal over the years, or his hint at returning west permanently. The doctor's son, Nathan stated rather than asked. He has intentions. Phoebe looked up, startled. How did you? Your mother's expression when she left. And I hear things, even on the reservation. The bell chimed again, as customers entered. Nathan stepped back, acknowledging the interruption with a slight nod. I must join my people in the trading square, he said. But I would speak with you again, Phoebe Bennett. Tonight, she suggested. After closing, I could show you my garden behind the shop. As he turned to leave, Phoebe called after him. Nathan, why did you really come back? After all this time? He paused, his expression unreadable. To deliver that knowledge, he gestured to the ledger. And to see what became of the little girl who wore my vision stone. After he departed, Phoebe touched the stone at her throat, warmer than usual against her skin. The child's question from long ago echoed in her memory, but now a woman's heart framed a different question entirely. Evening shadows lengthened as Phoebe closed her shop. The day had been unusually busy, townsfolk finding excuses to stop in. Their curiosity about the Apache traders and her connection to them, poorly disguised behind requests for headache powders and skin salves. She had just finished sweeping when a sharp rap sounded on her door. Expecting Nathan, she opened it to find Marshal Wilson instead. At 40, Wilson was relatively new to town, but carried himself with the hard-earned authority of a man who had harnessed law in more dangerous settlements. "Evening, Miss Bennet," he said, thumbs hooked in his belt. "Noticed you had quite the visitor this morning." "Several, actually," she replied evenly. "It was a busy day." Wilson's weathered face remained impassive. "You know which one I mean. 2 hawks. The Apache. What about him? Just curious about your connection." "Mayor mentioned you knew him from childhood." Phoebe straightened, meeting his gaze directly. "Nathan Two Hawks saved my life during a flash flood when I was 7. He taught me about medicinal plants that form the foundation of this business." Wilson nodded slowly. "Heard something like that. Also heard he left 13 years back to rejoin the hostiles during the conflicts." "Is there a particular reason for these questions, Marshal?" Before he could answer, Thomas Bennet appeared behind him looking concerned. "Everything all right here?" Thomas asked, his voice pleasant but firm. "Just checking on your daughter, Mr. Bennet. Standard procedure with the Apache in town." After the marshal departed, Thomas entered the shop, closing the door behind him. At 63 he remained robust, despite a slight stoop to his shoulders. "Phoebe," he began carefully, "people are talking. People always talk, Father. This is different." He removed his spectacles, polishing them nervously with his handkerchief. "2 hawks coming directly to your shop this morning, staying for nearly an hour. We were discussing medicinal plants," she said, gesturing to the ledger Nathan had given her. "Professional consultation." Thomas sighed, replacing his spectacles. "You know, it's more complicated than that." He hesitated. "There's going to be a town council meeting tonight. Some folks are concerned about the Apache staying another day." "On what grounds?" "They've been peaceful, brought fair trades. Ryder came in this afternoon with news of an attack on a stagecoach 50 miles south." Thomas looked pained. "Apache raiders, they're saying." Phoebe's blood chilled. "That has nothing to do with Nathan's group." "I know that. Mayor Bartlett knows that. But fear doesn't distinguish between one Apache and another." After her father left, Phoebe hurried to her garden behind the shop. The small plot contained neat rows of medicinal herbs alongside flowers and vegetables. In the center stood a newly installed stone bench where she had planned to sit with Nathan this evening. Now she paced instead, anxiety building as dusk deepened. A soft footfall alerted her to his presence. Nathan emerged from the shadows, his expression grave. "You've heard," he said, not a question. Phoebe nodded. "The stagecoach attack. Already the blame falls on all Apache." His voice held resignation rather than surprise. "Even those of us who have kept peace for years, Mayor Bartlett won't let them drive you out without cause," she insisted. "Perhaps, but we will leave at dawn nonetheless. My presence endangers my people now." Phoebe's chest tightened. "So soon?" Nathan moved closer, studying her garden with appreciation. "You have created something healing here," he observed, changing the subject. "Like you yourself." From a nearby rosebush he carefully plucked a perfect white bloom, offering it to her with formal dignity. "In my culture, the white rose represents honesty between 2 people," he explained. "No secrets, no shadows." Phoebe accepted the flower, their fingers briefly touching. "Then let me speak honestly," she said, summoning her courage. "I don't want you to leave again." Something flickered in Nathan's dark eyes, pain, regret, perhaps something warmer. "What I want and what must be have rarely aligned in my life," he replied softly. The distant sound of voices interrupted them, a gathering crowd moving toward the town hall. Among them, Phoebe recognized Marshal Wilson's authoritative tone. You should go, she urged. If they're looking for someone to blame, I have lived with blame that was not mine for many years, Nathan interrupted calmly. I will not hide now. Then I'm coming with you, Phoebe decided, placing the rose carefully in her hair. The council should hear from someone who knows the truth of your character. Nathan studied her, something like pride warming his stoic features. The child who followed me has become a woman who stands beside me, he observed. Together, they walked toward the town hall, where lanterns illuminated a gathering crowd. As they approached, conversations halted, faces turned, and a path cleared. Some expressions hostile, others merely curious, a few openly supportive. Mayor Bartlett stood on the steps, his military bearing evident as he raised a hand for silence. Beside him, the marshal watched Nathan with open suspicion. Citizens, Bartlett began, we've called this meeting to address concerns about recent events and our current visitors. Nathan straightened to his full, impressive height. Phoebe stepped forward, standing deliberately at his side as the crowd's murmurs intensified. The town hall meeting stretched into the night. Mayor Bartlett maintained order as best he could, while Marshal Wilson presented the facts about the stagecoach attack. 3 dead, including a woman, and citizens voiced increasingly hostile opinions. Nathan stood silent throughout, his dignified presence a counterpoint to the fear surrounding him. When finally given opportunity to speak, his words were measured, respectful. My people and I mourn the innocent lives lost, he stated. But those who committed this act are not of our band. We have kept peace for 5 winters since signing the treaty. Some townsfolk scoffed openly, others listened with reluctant consideration. Thomas Bennett surprised Phoebe by rising to speak in Nathan's defense, recounting how he had saved his daughter's life and provided a map that helped settlers avoid Apache conflicts years ago. When the meeting finally adjourned well past midnight, the decision was tenuous. The Apache traders could remain 1 more day under doubled cavalry escort, departing at dawn the following morning. It is more than I expected, Nathan told Phoebe as they walked back toward her shop. Your father spoke well on our behalf. He's a fair man, beneath his prejudices, Phoebe replied, exhaustion evident in her voice. They paused at her door, the street empty around them. Nathan studied her face in the moonlight, his expression unreadable. You should rest, he said finally. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Phoebe wasn't ready for their evening to end. Tea first, she insisted. I have questions still unanswered. Inside her small living quarters behind the shop, Phoebe lit a lamp and prepared tea with herbs known for their calming properties. Nathan looked out of place among her feminine furnishings, yet somehow right, as if her home had been waiting for his presence. Will you return to the reservation after trading? She asked, setting a steaming cup before him. For now, but changes are coming. Nathan accepted the cup with a nod of thanks. The younger men grow restless with reservation life. The government promises are empty as always, and you, what do you want? His dark eyes met hers. What I have always wanted. Freedom for my people to live with dignity. He paused, though my definition of my people has grown more complex with time. They talked late into the night. Nathan spoke of reservation conditions, of children sent to white schools where their language was forbidden, of the struggle to maintain traditions. Phoebe shared her experiences establishing her business, the resistance she'd faced as a woman healer, her correspondence with Michael. Near dawn, as exhaustion finally overtook them, Phoebe asked the question that had lingered since his return. Do you ever think about my question? The one I asked as a child. A rare smile touched Nathan's lips. The marriage proposal, it has crossed my mind. Her cheeks warmed. I was very forward for a 7-year-old. You were honest. It is a quality that remains. His expression grew serious. And if you ask now as a woman grown, the hypothetical question hung between them, charged with possibility. Before Phoebe could respond, a knock interrupted them. Sarah Bennett entered, her expression apologetic but determined. Phoebe, your father sent me to check on you. Her gaze moved between them, noting their proximity but making no comment. And to deliver this, she extended an envelope, bearing an Eastern postmark. Phoebe recognized the handwriting immediately. Michael Bartlett. After her mother departed, Phoebe broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside lay a formal letter and a small velvet box. She read silently, color rising in her cheeks. "Dr. Bartlett has proposed marriage," Nathan observed, his voice carefully neutral. "Yes." Phoebe set down the letter, not opening the box. "He's returning next month to establish a practice here. He wants an answer before he arrives." A respected doctor, the mayor's son. Nathan rose, moving toward the door. "A suitable match that would bring you security, position, acceptance. Nathan, you must consider carefully." His voice held no jealousy, only concern for her welfare. "A life with me would mean leaving much behind, facing prejudice daily, perhaps even leaving this place eventually." "You speak as though you're offering an alternative," Phoebe said, studying him intently. Nathan's hand went to the medicine pouch at his neck, the one he had worn since she first knew him. With deliberate movements, he removed it and placed it on the table between them. "Among my people, when a man offers his medicine pouch to a woman, he offers his protection, his strength, his future." His eyes held hers steadily. "I make no formal request tonight, but I would have you know that the path exists, should you choose to walk it." Phoebe stared at the weathered pouch, understanding its profound significance. Inside, she knew, would be sacred objects representing his connection to the spirit world. Items never shared lightly. "I need time," she whispered. "Of course." Nathan retrieved his pouch with dignity. "I leave tomorrow, but I will return in one moon cycle for your trading fair. By then, perhaps, you will know your heart's direction." As he departed into the pre-dawn light, Phoebe remained at her table. Michael's unopened ring box on one side, and the lingering warmth of Nathan's medicine pouch on the other, two possible futures demanding an impossible choice. The Apache delegation departed at dawn as promised, Nathan riding tall among them. Phoebe watched from her doorway, their parting words still echoing in her mind. No declarations had been made, yet something profound had shifted between them. 3 weeks passed. The town's annual trading fair approached, bringing anticipation of commerce, social gatherings, and visitors from surrounding settlements. Phoebe threw herself into preparations, creating extra stock for her booth, while deflecting her mother's gentle inquiries about Michael's proposal. The small wooden box containing his ring remained unopened in her dresser drawer. On a warm Tuesday afternoon, Mayor Bartlett entered her shop, his expression grave. "Miss Bennett, might I have a word in private?" Phoebe dismissed her young assistant and led the mayor to her back room. "Is something wrong? I've received troubling news." He removed a telegram from his pocket, the yellow paper creased from repeated folding. "The Interior Department has issued new directives regarding reservation boundaries." Phoebe accepted the telegram, scanning its terse contents. Her blood chilled as she grasped the implications. "They're reducing the San Carlos territory by half, and relocating 3 bands including 2 Hawks people." Bartlett's voice lowered. "They're being moved to the desert lands near Fort Sill. Poor hunting, little water." "That's essentially a death sentence," Phoebe whispered, her healer's knowledge recognizing what such conditions would mean for children and elders. "I've written to Washington, expressing my concerns," Bartlett continued, "as have several other territorial officials who understand the likely consequences, but the decision appears firm." "When will this happen?" "Orders take effect next month." Bartlett reclaimed the telegram, his military posture suggesting frustrated helplessness. "I thought you should know, given your connection to 2 Hawks." After he left, Phoebe paced her garden, mind racing. The reservation land, while inadequate, at least allowed Nathan's people to maintain some semblance of their traditional way. Relocation would destroy what little autonomy remained to them. That evening, Phoebe found herself walking toward the telegraph office. The clerk raised eyebrows at her request to send a message to the San Carlos Indian Agency, but accepted her payment without comment. 3 days later, a cavalry lieutenant delivered a response. The sealed envelope contained a single sheet of paper bearing only 4 words in familiar handwriting. "Coming. Wait for me." The town's preparations for the trading fair intensified. Bunting-decorated storefronts, temporary stalls appeared in the square, and caravans of traders began arriving from neighboring settlements. Beneath the festive atmosphere, Phoebe sensed an undercurrent of tension. News of the reservation directive had spread, along with rumors of Apache resistance. 5 days before the fair, Phoebe closed her shop early and climbed the familiar trail to the ridge overlooking the valley. The evening light painted the landscape in amber hues as she settled on a boulder, watching the western horizon. She didn't turn when she heard the soft footfall behind her. She'd been expecting him. "You came earlier than your message suggested," she said. Nathan moved to stand beside her, his face drawn with worry and fatigue. "Your warning required immediate attention. You received my telegram then?" "Yes. The agency clerk is sympathetic to our cause." Nathan gazed over the valley, his profile sharp against the sunset. "What else have you heard?" "Only what Mayor Bartlett shared. The San Carlos territory reduced. Your people relocated to Fort Sill." Nathan nodded grimly. "The Council of Elders met for 3 days after your message arrived. Opinion is divided. Some advocate compliance, fearing military reprisal if we resist. Others, he didn't need to finish. Phoebe understood the implication. Armed resistance, bloodshed, eventual defeat. "What do you believe is right?" she asked. "I believe in survival," he answered carefully. "Of our people, our ways, our stories. Sometimes survival requires bending like the willow rather than standing rigid like the oak." From within his shirt, Nathan withdrew a folded document. Unlike the government telegram with its official letterhead, this paper was handmade, its surface textured and uneven. "This is a petition from our tribal council," he explained, unfolding it reverently. "It proposes an alternative, allowing our band to establish a self-sufficient settlement on the neutral territory near Junction Creek, land no settlers want, but where we could maintain our ways without interference." Phoebe examined the document, noting the carefully penned English alongside Apache symbols. Who would consider such a petition? The territorial governor has shown fairness in the past. With support from respected local officials, like Mayor Bartlett, it might receive consideration. Nathan's voice held carefully measured hope. It would require signatures from influential settlers as well, demonstrating community support. The implication was clear. He needed her help gathering those signatures. "The trading fair would be an opportunity," she observed. "Representatives from every settlement in the territory will attend." "Yes, but opposition will be strong. Those who profit from government contracts, for reservation supplies, those who desire our remaining lands." Nathan's expression darkened. "And those who simply hate." Phoebe placed her hand over his on the petition. "I'll help you, whatever it takes." His fingers tightened briefly around hers. "This path holds danger, Phoebe Bennett. For me, certainly. But also for anyone who stands with me. I made my choice the moment I sent that telegram," she replied, her voice steady. "Though I suspect my father will have strong opinions about it." As darkness gathered around them, they remained on the ridge, discussing strategy, risks, and the fragile hope embodied in the humble petition. A last chance for peace when the drums of conflict beat ever louder in the distance. The trading fair opened with a brilliant dawn. Flags and banners fluttered above crowded stalls, while musicians played on a hastily constructed bandstand. Behind the festivities, Phoebe worked methodically, approaching influential visitors with the tribal petition. Some signed readily, persuaded by her earnest explanations. Others refused outright, their prejudices immovable. By midday she had collected 12 signatures, including 3 from prominent ranchers who appreciated the Apache's proposed settlement being far from their cattle lands. Mayor Bartlett had not only signed, but actively recruited additional supporters, his military reputation lending credibility to the cause. Nathan maintained a deliberately low profile, meeting discreetly with sympathetic officials in Phoebe's back garden. His presence in town had drawn attention, but the fair's bustle provided some cover for their activities. "The territorial senator arrives tomorrow," Bartlett informed them during one such meeting. "His support would carry significant weight." "And the Indian agent?" Nathan inquired. Agent Blackwood is problematic, Bartlett admitted. He stands to lose considerable influence if your band establishes independence from San Carlos. Phoebe listened intently, making mental notes of potential allies and obstacles. This political maneuvering was new territory for her, but she was learning quickly. That evening, Thomas Bennett requested a private word with his daughter. They walked together along the edge of the fairgrounds, lantern light illuminating their path. Your mother tells me you haven't responded to Dr. Bartlett's proposal, he began carefully. I needed time to consider, Phoebe replied. Thomas nodded slowly. A prudent approach to such decision. He paused before continuing. She also mentioned you've been gathering signatures for Two Hawks' petition. Phoebe met her father's gaze directly. Yes, it's a reasonable alternative to forced relocation. Perhaps. Thomas removed his spectacles, a habit when difficult conversations loomed. But your involvement complicates matters. People talk, Phoebe. Let them talk. It's not that simple. Her father's voice carried genuine concern. Your association with Two Hawks is being noticed. Questions are being raised and your loyalties. My loyalty is to what's right, Phoebe insisted. Nathan's people deserve better than desert exile. Thomas studied his daughter, recognition dawning in his eyes. It's not just their cause you support, is it? It's him specifically. Phoebe considered deflecting but chose honesty instead. Yes. Her father exhaled heavily. I feared as much. After a moment he added, have you opened Dr. Bartlett's box yet? No. You should, Thomas advised, before making any irreversible decisions. Later that night, Phoebe finally opened the velvet box in her dresser drawer. Inside lay not simply a ring as she'd expected, but an ornate silver locket on a delicate chain. She opened the heart-shaped pendant to find a miniature portrait of Michael on one side and a lock of his dark hair on the other, a traditional token of devoted intention. The accompanying note explained his choice, to hold close to your heart until we are together again. Guilt twisted in Phoebe's stomach. Michael's affection was genuine, his offer sincere. He would provide stability, respect, children who would never face prejudice for their parentage, a life without the constant struggle that walking with Nathan would surely bring. Yet when she closed her eyes, it was Nathan's face she saw. Dawn found her back at her booth, the locket tucked away in her pocket, a physical reminder of the choice still looming. She had just arranged her remedies for display when urgent voices caught her attention. A crowd gathered near the town hall where Mayor Bartlett addressed several agitated men. Phoebe approached cautiously, recognizing Indian Agent Blackwood among them. His florid face and aggressive stance suggested a confrontation in progress. The petition is seditious, Blackwood declared loudly. It undermines federal authority and encourages rebellion against lawful directives. It proposes a peaceful alternative. Bartlett countered calmly, one that could prevent unnecessary suffering and potential conflict. Where is Two Hawks? Blackwood demanded. I have questions about his activities since leaving the reservation without proper authorization. Phoebe's heart raced. Nathan had mentioned needing to meet with elders from his tribe who had arrived secretly to observe the petition's progress. He wasn't expected back until midday. I believe he's meeting with traders, she interjected. Stepping forward, I can deliver a message when he returns. Blackwood turned his cold gaze upon her. Miss Bennett, I'm not surprised to find you involved. He produced a folded document from his coat. Perhaps you'd like to explain this intercepted telegram sent to San Carlos 3 weeks ago, warning of the relocation directive before it was officially announced. The crowd murmured as Blackwood continued. Interference with federal Indian affairs is a serious offense, as is conspiring with reservation Indians against government policy. There's been no conspiracy, Phoebe insisted, though her voice wavered slightly. We'll determine that through proper investigation, Blackwood replied. Meanwhile, I've requested that Marshal Wilson detain Two Hawks upon his return for questioning regarding potential incitement of reservation unrest. Mayor Bartlett stepped forward. Agent Blackwood, I must protest. Two Hawks has acted as a force for peace throughout this process. Your protest is noted, Mayor, but this matter now falls under federal jurisdiction. As the confrontation escalated, Phoebe slipped away, one thought foremost in her mind. She needed to warn Nathan before he returned to town and walked into Blackwood's trap. Phoebe raced toward the stables, her skirts gathered in one hand. Nathan had mentioned meeting tribal elders at Blackwater Creek, 5 miles northwest of town. If she rode fast enough, she might intercept him before he returned. The stable boy hesitated when she requested her mares. "Your father said you weren't to take rides alone during the fair, Miss Bennet." "This is an emergency," Phoebe insisted, pressing a coin into his palm. "I'll return before he notices." Minutes later, she galloped along the northwest trail, urgency driving her faster than wisdom might allow. The terrain grew rocky as she approached the creek, forcing her to slow. Distant figures appeared near the water, Nathan and 3 older men in traditional Apache dress. "Nathan," she called, dismounting hastily, "you can't return to town." His expression shifted from surprise to alert concern as she explained Blackwood's intentions. The tribal elders exchanged rapid words in Apache, their weathered faces grave. "This changes everything," Nathan said finally. "Agent Blackwood seeks a pretext to discredit our petition and force compliance." "What will you do?" Phoebe asked. Nathan conferred briefly with the elders before answering. "We must approach the territorial senator directly without Blackwood's interference." He turned to Phoebe. "Return to town. Tell Mayor Bartlett what has happened. Ask him to bring the senator to the old mission ruins at sunset. And you, we will take an alternate route. Blackwood must not know of this meeting." Phoebe hesitated. "Let me come with you. Too dangerous." Nathan's tone softened as he added, "You have done enough already, more than I had any right to ask." One of the elders approached, pressing a small object into Phoebe's palm. A carved bone whistle hung on a sinew cord. The old man spoke in Apache, his eyes kind but serious. "He says this whistle calls to guardian spirits for protection," Nathan translated. "A gift to thank you for your warning." The sun had begun its westward descent as Phoebe rode back toward town. Her mind raced with contingency plans. If Bartlett couldn't persuade the senator, if Blackwood discovered their meeting, if Nathan were captured, she was so absorbed in these thoughts that she nearly missed the dust cloud rising from the trail ahead. Riders, at least 6, moving fast in her direction. The glint of sunlight on metal revealed cavalry insignia. Phoebe urged her mare off the trail, concealing herself behind a rocky outcropping. The patrol thundered past, led by Marshal Wilson with Agent Blackwood close behind. "They must have discovered where Nathan was meeting the elders," she whispered to herself, cold dread settling in her stomach. Once the patrol passed, Phoebe spurred her horse back toward town by a different route. She needed to reach Mayor Bartlett immediately. The fair was in full swing when she arrived, making it difficult to move through the crowded streets. She finally located Bartlett near the judges' stand for the livestock competition. "They've gone after Nathan," she explained breathlessly after pulling him aside. "Blackwood, Wilson, and cavalry riders." Bartlett's expression darkened. Damn Blackwood's impatience. "The senator was willing to hear Two Hawks' proposal. Nathan wanted you to bring the senator to the old mission ruins at sunset." "That may still be possible," Bartlett mused. "Senator Hayes is a reasonable man who dislikes Blackwood's heavy-handed methods. But if they capture Nathan before then—" "They won't," Bartlett assured her, though doubt shadowed his eyes. "Two Hawks knows this territory better than any cavalry patrol." As the mayor departed to locate the senator, Phoebe's father appeared at her elbow. "Where have you been?" Thomas demanded, his face lined with worry. "Your mother's been searching everywhere." "I needed air," Phoebe lied, avoiding his gaze. Thomas studied his daughter's flushed face and wind-tangled hair. "You rode out to warn him, didn't you?" Phoebe didn't deny it. "He's trying to prevent bloodshed, father. That's all he's ever done. By risking yourself—" Thomas shook his head in frustration. Phoebe, Agent Blackwood is threatening charges of conspiracy. Do you understand what that means? Before she could respond, commotion erupted at the edge of town, horses arriving at speed. Phoebe pushed through the gathering crowd, her father close behind. Marshal Wilson dismounted, his expression grim. We found their camp, he announced to Blackwood. But they were gone, must have been warned. Blackwood's gaze swept the onlookers until it settled on Phoebe. Perhaps Miss Bennet can explain their miraculous foreknowledge of our approach. You have no proof my daughter has done anything wrong. Thomas interjected, stepping protectively forward. I'll be the judge of what constitutes wrongdoing, where reservation Indians are concerned. Blackwood replied coldly, Marshal, I want 2 hawks found before sundown. Postmen on all approaches to town. As the crowd dispersed, Phoebe clutched the bone whistle beneath her shawl. Sunset was 2 hours away. Somehow she needed to ensure Nathan and the senator could meet safely at the mission ruins, away from Blackwood's interference. Sarah approached, reading the determination in her daughter's face. Whatever you're planning, she said softly, be careful. I don't know what you mean, Phoebe replied. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. Yes, you do. Your heart has chosen, hasn't it? Phoebe met her mother's knowing gaze and nodded once. Then follow it, Sarah whispered, but wisely. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Phoebe slipped away from the fairgrounds, Michael's locket in one pocket and the bone whistle in the other, symbols of 2 possible futures, only one of which she could embrace. Sunset painted the adobe walls of the old mission ruins in fiery hues. Phoebe crouched in the shadows of the bell tower, scanning the surrounding countryside. She had arrived an hour earlier, choosing a route that avoided Blackwood's patrols. The bone whistle hung around her neck, its smooth surface a comforting talisman against her skin. In the distance 2 riders approached from the east, Mayor Bartlett and a distinguished gentleman she presumed was Senator Hayes. Movement from the western ridge caught her attention. 3 figures emerged from the rocks, Nathan and 2 tribal elders. They approached cautiously, staying low and using the terrain for cover. Phoebe descended from her lookout to meet Nathan at the mission entrance. The senator is coming, she whispered. No sign of Blackwood yet. Nathan nodded, his expression tense but determined. You should not be here, he admonished gently. If Blackwood arrives, then I face the consequences of my choice, she replied firmly. The 2 men dismounted in the mission courtyard. Senator Hayes was older than Phoebe had expected, with shrewd eyes and the weathered complexion of a man who began life working outdoors before turning to politics. Senator Hayes, Nathan greeted him with dignified formality. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Mayor Bartlett speaks highly of your character, Mr. Two Hawks. The senator replied, though Agent Blackwood offers a rather different assessment. Blackwood serves interests beyond the welfare of either settlers or Apache, Nathan stated bluntly. The senator nodded thoughtfully. So I've begun to suspect. Let's see this petition I've heard so much about. The 2 tribal elders unrolled the document on a fallen stone pillar. For 30 minutes they discussed the proposal's details, boundaries, governance, terms of peaceful coexistence. Senator Hayes asked pointed questions about implementation and enforcement. Your terms are reasonable, he finally acknowledged. More importantly, they offer a practical alternative to what would likely be a bloody and expensive forced relocation. Hope kindled in Phoebe's chest as the senator removed a fountain pen from his coat. I will present this petition to the territorial governor with my endorsement. As he bent to sign, distant hoofbeats echoed against the canyon walls. Phoebe rushed to the bell tower, her heart sinking at what she saw. Blackwood approaching with 8 mounted men. Blackwood, she called down. With cavalry. The senator straightened, displeasure evident in his expression. I explicitly told him not to interfere with this meeting. He means to prevent it, Bartlett explained grimly. Two Hawks' proposal threatens his authority over reservation affairs. Nathan exchanged rapid words with the tribal elders. We must go, he told the senator. But first, your signature." The senator quickly signed the petition. One elder carefully rolled the document and secured it inside a leather tube while the other kept watch at the perimeter. "Take the back trail through the wash," Bartlett advised. "We'll delay them here." Nathan gripped the mayor's forearm in a gesture of respect before turning to Phoebe. "Come," he said simply, extending his hand. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. "Yes." Together they slipped out the mission's rear exit. The elders closed behind. They had barely reached the cover of a dry creek bed when Blackwood's party thundered into the mission courtyard. From their concealment, Phoebe could hear the agent's angry accusations and the senator's measured but firm responses. "This petition has my full support, Blackwood. Your interference in this matter ends now." The four fugitives moved swiftly through gathering darkness. At the base of a steep canyon wall, Nathan paused, assessing their options. "The elders will take the petition along the high trail," he decided. "It's difficult but safer. We'll continue through the canyon to draw pursuit away from them." Phoebe nodded, understanding the strategy but also its implications. "They'll follow us." "Yes." Nathan's eyes held hers in the fading light. "This path commits you. There may be no returning to your former life. I know." She reached into her pocket and withdrew Michael's silver locket. With deliberate movements, she hung it on a juniper branch where it caught the last rays of sunset. "I've made my choice." They continued through the deepening twilight, Nathan setting a challenging pace. Despite Phoebe's familiarity with the terrain, fatigue began to slow her steps. When she stumbled over loose stones, Nathan lifted her across a particularly treacherous section with effortless strength. "Rest a moment," he insisted, finding a sheltered overhang. As they paused, distant shouts confirmed Blackwood had discovered their trail. Nathan tensed, ready to move again, but Phoebe placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Your leg is bleeding," she observed, noticing the dark stains spreading on his buckskin leggings. An old wound reopened. "It's nothing." Ignoring his protest, she tore a strip from her petticoat and bound the injury, a deep gash above his knee that explained his slight limp earlier. "We must reach Whispering Canyon before dawn," Nathan said as she worked. "My people wait there with horses." "And then, north, to Junction Creek, the land we proposed in the petition." His expression softened as he watched her deft movements. "It will not be an easy life, Phoebe Bennett. No life worth living is easy." She finished the bandage and met his gaze steadily. "I don't fear hardship. I only feared a life half-lived." Nathan brushed a strand of hair from her face, the gesture unbearably tender. "The child who asked if I would marry her has become a woman I would be honored to walk beside." The distant voices grew louder, interrupting the moment. They continued their flight through the darkness, the pursuit always just far enough behind to maintain hope. Near midnight, they reached Whispering Canyon, where 3 mounted Apache warriors waited with 2 additional horses. As Phoebe mounted, she looked back toward the town lights flickering in the distance, the world she was leaving behind. Then she turned forward, facing the unknown territory ahead, and the man who had captured her heart across 13 years, and countless obstacles. "Are you certain?" Nathan asked one final time as they prepared to ride. Phoebe touched the vision stone at her throat, and smiled. "I've been certain since I was 7 years old." 5 months later, the settlement at Junction Creek had taken shape. 28 lodges formed a semicircle along the creek's fertile bank, with small garden plots already yielding early vegetables. A council house stood at the center, its mud brick walls adorned with symbols of the tribe's journey. Phoebe emerged from the lodge she shared with Nathan, squinting in the bright morning light. The red bandana tied around her hair marked her as both different from and part of this community that had cautiously accepted her. At first, some had viewed the white woman with suspicion, but her healing skills and evident devotion to Nathan had gradually earned their respect. A rider approached from the south, Thomas Bennett, making his monthly journey to deliver mail and supply. These visits had begun 3 months ago, a tentative reconnection after the tumultuous events of the trading fair. Phoebe greeted her father with a warm embrace. "You're early this month. Good weather," he replied, dismounting stiffly. At 64, these rides taxed him more than he would admit. "And your mother insisted I deliver this without delay." He retrieved a package wrapped in oilcloth from his saddlebag. Inside, Phoebe found a hand-woven blanket in vibrant blues and reds, a wedding gift, months delayed but deeply meaningful. "The tribal council has approved our marriage ceremony next full moon," she told her father. "Will you and mother come?" Thomas nodded, emotion briefly tightening his features. She wouldn't miss it. Even started learning a few Apache words. They walked together toward the council house where Nathan was meeting with the elders. The petition's success, rare in federal Indian affairs, had established this settlement as an independent band with provisional self-governance. Senator Hayes had proven a powerful ally, though the arrangement remained precarious, requiring constant diplomacy. "Any trouble from Blackwood?" Thomas asked, scanning the industrious community. "He visits monthly, with a cavalry escort, checking for compliance with the agreement's terms." Phoebe's expression darkened. "Looking for reasons to revoke it, and finding none, I'd wager." Thomas smiled proudly at his daughter. "Nathan ensures we exceed every requirement." She gestured toward new irrigation channels and carefully managed grazing lands. "The Senator's report to Congress next month will recommend making our status permanent." Nathan emerged from the council house, greeting Thomas with formal respect that had gradually warmed over recent months. His injured leg had healed well, though he still favored it slightly on cold morning. "The hunting party returns," he announced, pointing toward distant riders approaching from the western hills. Among them rode a younger Apache who had become Nathan's unofficial second-in-command. He carried something large and ceremonial wrapped in tanned hide. "The bride price is complete," Nathan explained to Phoebe. "As tradition requires." Thomas raised an eyebrow questioningly. "The groom's family must provide gifts, demonstrating his worth," Phoebe explained. "Though I tried to tell Nathan it wasn't necessary." "Some traditions should be honored," Nathan replied, his typically solemn expression softened by the affection in his eye. That evening, a sunset painted the canyon walls in amber hues reminiscent of their first meeting place. The community gathered for a feast, celebrating the hunting party's success. Thomas sat among them as an honored guest, the only white man besides Phoebe in the settlement. After the meal, the ceremonial bundle was presented. Nathan carefully unwrapped the hides to reveal an elaborately carved wooden cradle board, its surface adorned with protective symbols and intricate patterns. "For our children," he explained simply, presenting it to Phoebe. She accepted it with proper solemnity, though her eyes sparkled with emotion. The community's women had been exchanging knowing glances about her recently, noting subtle changes that suggested the cradle might be needed sooner than expected. As darkness fell and stars emerged, Phoebe and Nathan walked Thomas to his horse for his return journey. He would camp halfway and arrive home by the following evening. "Your mother sends her love," he told Phoebe as he mounted. He pressed a small object into her palm, the vision stone she had left behind during their hasty departure months ago. Sarah had found it among her belongings and insisted Thomas return it. After her father departed, Phoebe and Nathan stood on a small rise overlooking their new home. Campfires twinkled below, voices and occasional laughter drifting upward on the evening breeze. 20 years ago, a little girl asked me a question," Nathan said, his deep voice gentle in the darkness. "I gave her the only answer I could then. It was the right answer," Phoebe acknowledged. "I needed to grow up, to understand the world's complexities before I could truly choose this path." Nathan touched the vision stone in her hand. "The spirits guided us on separate journeys so we could find each other again as equals." "Not exactly equals," Phoebe teased lightly. "You're still a giant." A rare laugh rumbled from his chest as he drew her close. "In my people's stories, giants protect what they love." The Arizona night enfolded them, crickets singing in the grass as they stood together between two worlds that they were helping to bridge. Behind them lay painful histories and obstacles overcome. Before them stretched a future uncertain, but faced together. "Will you marry me, Nathan Two Hawks?" Phoebe asked softly, echoing her childhood question, but with a woman's heart behind the words. He bent to kiss her gently, his answer no longer constrained by duty or separation or the prejudices of others. "Yes, Phoebe Bennett," he replied simply. "In this world and all the ones that follow." The vision stone caught starlight in her palm, its natural hole framing a single bright star, a window through which Certs watched over them. Just as Nathan had explained to a curious child beside this same desert sky 20 years before.